For over a decade, Amelia Bennett devoted her life to raising her daughter Victoria, after her husband abandoned them for his former flame. In the quiet suburbs of Charleston, South Carolina, Amelia built a simple yet loving home. She never remarried, pouring all her energy into ensuring Victoria never lacked anything, emotionally or materially. Her days were filled with school pickups, home-cooked meals, bedtime stories, and the endless chores of motherhood. Amelia never complained. She believed that her sacrifices were acts of love, and she wore her solitude like armor. Proudly, silently. Now, at 60 years old, Amelia's once jet-black hair had turned to silver, and the lines on her face whispered the stories of every sacrifice made. Her joy came from small moments: sipping tea on the porch, walking her granddaughter Ellie to preschool, and seeing her daughter thrive with a promising career and a kind husband, Mark. She felt proud, believing every ounce of pain she endured was worth it. When Victoria insisted on planning Amelia's 60th birthday, promising a grand celebration, Amelia's heart brimmed with gratitude. She had never asked for recognition, yet finally, it seemed someone saw her. What she didn't know, however, was that this birthday would be the beginning of a heartbreak she never saw coming. For her 60th birthday, Amelia had imagined a simple evening. Nothing extravagant, just the warmth of family, a homemade cake, laughter from her granddaughter, and a heartfelt hug from her daughter, Riley. Instead, she found herself sitting alone in a spotless living room, the air too quiet, the silence too loud. The cake she'd baked herself sat untouched on the coffee table. She had dressed nicely that morning, taken Annie to school, cleaned the house, and waited, fully trusting her daughter's promise. "We'll celebrate tonight, Mom." But as dusk fell and no one returned, her phone finally rang. "Mom, work came up." Riley's voice crackled with tension. "Jack and I can't make it tonight. I'm so sorry." Amelia forced a smile. "It's all right, honey. Don't worry. You're both working hard." She hung up, the weight in her chest spreading like ink in water. She wandered into the kitchen to simmer a soup, something warm for later. But she never got to eat it. While scrolling through videos online, her thumb paused on a familiar silhouette. A video, recently uploaded, showed a lavish dinner party in a hotel. There stood Riley, radiant in a red dress, holding Annie's hand beside her husband Jack. They were gathered around a cake, singing happy birthday, not to Amelia, but to the woman who destroyed her marriage decades ago. Charles's mistress, Catherine. And then, Amelia heard it. "Happy birthday, Mom," Riley whispered sweetly, wrapping her arms around Catherine's shoulders. That word shattered her. Mom. That title wasn't just a word. It was decades of sacrifice. It was Amelia giving up her career, her youth, her happiness to raise Riley alone, after Charles left her for Catherine, claiming her kids needed a father more. Amelia never remarried out of fear a new man might mistreat Riley. She had shielded her daughter from every storm, only to be left out in the cold. Burning soup, a scalded hand, and a ringing doorbell jolted her out of the moment. A delivery man handed her a small cake she had ordered earlier. A modest one, she thought she might eat quietly while watching TV. But now it sat on the table beside the glowing phone screen, replaying the betrayal over and over. And then the front door creaked open. Riley walked in, arms full of excuses, pretending nothing had happened. Jack followed, Annie skipping behind them. Amelia didn't speak. Annie threw her arms open for a hug, but this time Amelia stayed seated, her body frozen. Riley noticed the untouched cake, her smile faltering. "Mom, you bought that for yourself." Amelia looked up slowly. "Riley," she said softly, "where were you today?" Riley blinked. "Hot work," she said too quickly. "We got caught up. It was just a busy day." But Annie's innocence betrayed them. "We had cake, Grandma. It was Catherine's birthday." The lie shattered. Amelia said nothing, simply pulled out her phone, tapped the video, and placed it on the table, and watched Riley's carefully constructed facade collapse. The tension in the room was thick. Amelia sat still, not looking at her daughter. Across from her, Riley struggled to piece together an explanation. She tried to laugh it off, waving the video away like it was nothing more than a misunderstanding. "Mom, it was just a birthday." "Catherine," She's part of our lives now. Why make this such a big deal? Amelia said nothing. Her silence spoke louder than any words. Riley's voice grew defensive, her tone sharper. You always make things so dramatic. Can't you just let go of the past for once? She's not the monster you make her out to be. She's actually nice. Nice. That word hit Amelia like a slap. Her hands trembled in her lap, but she kept her composure. You know what your father did to me. You watched him walk away, you cried in my arms when he chose her, you hated her. And now you call her mom. Like none of it mattered. Riley scoffed. People change. Maybe you're just too bitter to see that. Maybe that's why he left. The words cut deep. And then it happened. Without warning, Amelia's palm flew across Riley's face. The sound of the slap echoed through the living room like a gunshot. Riley gasped, stumbling back, hand pressed to her cheek. You hit me, she cried out. What the hell is wrong with you? She looked at Jack, stunned. He just shifted uncomfortably, offering no support. Annie, sensing the shift in energy, clung to Riley's leg, confused and frightened. Amelia stood up slowly. Her voice was low but steady, the tremor of pain barely hidden. I gave you everything. I sacrificed everything. I stayed when he didn't. I raised you alone. I fed you, clothed you, held you when you cried, stayed up through every fever and every nightmare, and this is what I get. You gave me love. Sure. Riley said through clenched teeth. But you also gave me guilt. You hung your pain over me like a shadow. And now, maybe I want something different. Amelia stared at her daughter. The child she had poured her soul into. The child who now looked at her with disdain. Slowly, she reached into the drawer by the couch and pulled out an envelope. What's that? Riley asked. Who's the bank transfer records? Amelia said. All the money I gave for your mortgage, for Annie's tuition, for groceries, every dime. Starting tomorrow. I won't be paying for anything else. Riley's eyes widened in panic. Mom, what are you saying? I'm saying I'm done. Amelia walked toward the stairs, calm and unshaken. From now on, you'll live the life you built. With the people you chose. But I'm no longer a part of it. Riley reached for her. But Amelia didn't stop. She climbed the stairs slowly, with the grace and finality of a queen leaving her throne. Downstairs, the small cake on the coffee table still sat untouched. The candles melted into themselves, and Riley, for the first time in her life, was completely, terrifyingly alone. The silence in Amelia's home stretched long after the front door closed behind her daughter. The once familiar hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the kitchen clock, even the occasional creak of the wooden floor, all of it now echoed through the emptiness like a reminder. She was truly alone. She didn't cry. There were no tears left. Instead, Amelia walked through the house she had cleaned every day for years, the house where her laughter had once mingled with her granddaughter's giggles, where she had baked Riley's favorite cookies and mended torn backpacks. Every picture frame on the wall told a story, but none of them had her in the center. She had been the background character in her own life. That night, she sat on the edge of her bed and made a decision. I will not be invisible anymore, she whispered to herself. The next morning, she packed only what she needed. She left behind the slippers she always wore. The ones Annie had picked out for her last Christmas. She left behind the birthday card Riley had signed the year before with a scribbled, "Love you, Mom," and nothing more. She left behind the woman who had tolerated disrespect in the name of love. Her feet carried her to a house she had bought years ago in secret. A quiet little cottage on the edge of a small town. No one knew about it. She had kept it under her name, quietly paying the taxes, tending to its upkeep whenever she could. She never thought she'd live there. But now, it was hers. Hers alone. The first night was still. No chatter, no footsteps. No one asking what's for dinner. Just her. And for the first time in years, she didn't hate the solitude. She brewed a pot of tea, curled up on a second-hand couch, and stared out the window as the sun dipped below the hills. The sky was a wash of lavender and gold. It looked like freedom. As the days passed, Amelia began to rebuild. Not her relationship with her daughter, but her own identity. She started taking long walks. She joined a pottery class. She met other women at the farmer's market. Women who, like her, had spent decades being caregivers only to be left behind. They laughed over coffee, swapped recipes, and shared old stories that no longer hurt to tell. Amelia even bought a new wardrobe. Bright scarves, flowing skirts, soft sweaters that made her feel radiant. No more muted tones. No more dressing like she didn't want to be seen. She wanted to be seen now. And slowly, something inside her shifted. She had once believed that her purpose ended when she stopped being needed. But now, she realized her life didn't begin or end with her daughter. It began with her. Her joy, her choices, her peace. For the first time in 60 years, Amelia wasn't someone's mother, or wife, or caretaker. She was simply Amelia, and that was more than enough. A few weeks into her quiet life, Amelia found herself waking up before sunrise. Not out of obligation, but anticipation. The little cottage had become her sanctuary. The routine she once performed for others had transformed into something sacred, something hers. She cooked for herself now. Small, flavorful meals with herbs she grew by the kitchen window. She no longer ate standing at the counter, shoveling bites between tasks. She set the table. She lit a candle. She played soft jazz and took her time. Every bite tasted like dignity. It was during one of her morning walks through the town square that she discovered something unexpected. A flyer pinned to a cafe bulletin board. Senior art classes, beginners welcome pottery, painting, photography. She had never done anything like that. Her fingers were used to folding laundry, scrubbing pans, and mending clothes. Art that belonged to other people. But something stirred in her. She jotted down the number and signed up that very afternoon. Her first pottery class was awkward. The clay resisted her at first. Like her life, it refused to take shape, but she listened, learned, and let herself get messy. The teacher, a gentle woman named Claire, offered kind encouragement. "Let the clay surprise you," she said. And it did. Amelia's first piece was uneven and flawed. But when she held it in her hands, her heart ached with pride. She had created something. For herself. Not for a husband. Not for a child. For her. That night, as she placed the small vase on her windowsill, she whispered, "You're finally allowed to bloom." With every passing day, more doors opened. She met Vanessa, a vibrant widow with a booming laugh and a heart full of stories. They bonded quickly. Two women who had once lived for others, now determined to live for themselves. Vanessa introduced Amelia to a local travel group. "We've both spent decades tied down," she said, eyes sparkling. "It's time we fly." So they did. They booked a tour across the Pacific Northwest. Waterfalls, hot springs, and quiet lakes that reflected the skies of second chances. Amelia stood beside the ocean and let the wind tangle her silver hair. She dipped her toes into cold mountain streams and giggled like a schoolgirl. In every city, every stop, she left behind pieces of the life that had once caged her. And somewhere along the way, she found a new dream, a cafe gallery of her own. A space for women like her, a place of rebirth. Back home, she began sketching ideas. She spoke to locals. She found a small storefront and slowly, carefully, started shaping her new vision. Just as she had with the clay. What once felt like the end had become her beginning. She had no interest in revenge. No desire to win anyone back, because she had already won her peace, her power, her purpose. Months passed, and Amelia no longer looked like the same woman who once cried into a birthday cake alone. Her steps had purpose now. Her shoulders sat higher, her gaze steady. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. The cozy art cafe she dreamt about was finally open. It sat on the corner of a quiet street, sunlight streaming through tall windows. Inside, soft music played while the scent of coffee and fresh scones wrapped around guests like a warm hug. Shelves displayed delicate pottery, abstract paintings, even photographs from her travels. All made by her. She named it Second Bloom. Because even roses can bloom again, she told a curious customer, her smile calm, proud. Locals loved it. Women came in with stories and burdens. Some had been cheated on, some widowed, some just lost in life's noise. They found refuge here. Some cried. Others laughed. All were welcome. And Amelia listened. She no longer shrank in silence. She spoke with warmth and clarity, never trying to prove herself, but never allowing herself to be disrespected again either. She was no longer a woman who begged to be seen. She commanded it. Gently, but firmly. Even her appearance shifted. Gone were the worn-out house dresses. Now she wore soft linen, stylish scarves, silver bangles. Her white hair, once hidden in a messy bun, was now cut into a chic bob that framed her face. She didn't do it to impress anyone. She did it because she finally saw herself as someone worth celebrating. Then, one quiet Thursday, Riley appeared at the cafe. She stood outside the door for a long time, uncertain whether to step in. But eventually, she entered. The bell jingled. Amelia looked up. Their eyes met. Riley looked tired, older somehow. Life had stripped away her pride. She wasn't there to demand anything. She wasn't there to beg for forgiveness. She just stood still and said, "This place is beautiful, Mom." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Amelia nodded. "Thank you." That was it. No big reunion. No embrace, just a quiet understanding. Later that evening, after the cafe closed, Amelia sat by the window with a cup of chamomile tea, the last rays of sunlight touching her face. She reflected on how far she'd come. Once, she was defined by sacrifice, by loyalty, by pain. Now, she was defined by choice. She had built a new identity not through revenge, but through rebirth. She still had scars, but they no longer bled. She still had memories, but they no longer broke her. And though Riley had finally begun her own journey of growth, Amelia had made peace with the fact that some bridges would never be what they once were. But that didn't mean her story was any less beautiful. After all, her story was still unfolding, and for the first time in decades, it belonged to her. Years later, Amelia stood in the garden behind her cafe, watching the spring breeze carry petals across the stone path. The lavender bloomed. The lemon tree she'd planted was heavy with fruit. She sipped her tea slowly, letting the warmth ground her in the present. A small group of women gathered near the back patio, sharing stories over fresh-baked scones and lavender lemonade. It was a support group now. A space Amelia created for women navigating life's unexpected turns: divorcees, widows, single mothers, caretakers. Every Thursday, they met here, not as broken women, but as women becoming. They often asked how she found the strength to let go of a daughter who had once meant everything. How she had walked away from a family that used her, erased her, and treated her love as an afterthought. Amelia would answer the same way every time. "Because I finally realized I deserved peace, too." She didn't hate Riley anymore, but she no longer lived for her either. Their relationship had changed. Riley visited sometimes, always with flowers or pastries. She was gentler now, humbled, and Amelia received her with quiet civility. There were no more birthday parties, no more obligations. Just a calm in the distance between them. That was enough. One rainy afternoon, a journalist stopped by the cafe, fascinated by its story. He asked Amelia what kept her going through the hardest parts. She looked at him, thoughtful. "I spent most of my life giving without question, believing that sacrifice was love," she said. "But now, I understand that boundaries are love too, that the most radical thing a woman can do is say, 'This is enough. I matter too.'" The journalist nodded, visibly moved. Her story spread, quietly at first, through word of mouth, then a viral post. People came to visit from neighboring towns. Not for the coffee, but for the spirit of the place. A sense of quiet strength lingered in the walls, a reminder that even the most shattered souls could rebuild. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Amelia sat alone under the pergola wrapped in vines. She opened a journal, her first in years, and wrote something simple. "I am no longer someone's mother. I am no longer someone's wife. I am Amelia, and I am finally, beautifully free." She closed the notebook and smiled. Because she hadn't just survived betrayal, she had alchemized it, turned heartbreak into healing, pain into purpose. And in that transformation, she found something she had never dared hope for: joy. Pure, undiluted, unapologetic joy. And as the wind kissed her face and the sky blushed above her, Amelia knew her story was no tragedy. It was a testament, a quiet, powerful reminder that it's never too late to start again. Amelia's journey taught one of life's hardest and most liberating truths. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. And yet, healing does not require revenge. It requires release. She had spent decades pouring herself into others. Her husband, her daughter, her granddaughter. Believing that being needed was the same as being loved. But when the people she sacrificed everything for turned away, she was forced to confront a painful reality: no one was coming to save her. So she saved herself. Her story is a reminder that you are not selfish for choosing peace. You are not wrong for walking away from those who only see your worth in what you provide. And most importantly, you are allowed to start over, no matter your age, no matter how long you've been overlooked. Amelia didn't win by getting even. She won by getting free. For anyone feeling invisible, used, or trapped in a role you never chose, Amelia's story is a call to reclaim your voice. Take stock of the people around you. Do they pour into you the way you pour into them? Do they see you as a person, not just a provider? It's never too late to reimagine your life. Start small. Set one boundary. Say no without guilt. Take a walk without apologizing. Invest in yourself. Learn something new. Travel. Volunteer. Rest. You're not too old. You're not too late. You deserve joy that isn't conditional. You deserve a life that's your own. What would you do differently if you had a second chance at life? Share your story in the comments. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful real-life journeys.